Welcome to Earth School's community event called Fairy Congress Magic. And I am really thrilled today to be welcoming three guests in a kind of reunion format. It feels like with lots of soul family. I believe all of you on this call or listening are really part of this soul kin family that's connected to the fairies, to the devas, to the she, to the elementals, to the magic of nature. And just a little bit about Earth School. I've been doing these events about once a month. They're free and they're really about community building. And my intention is through my Earth School to help create a place to cultivate co-creative relationships with the seen and unseen spirits of land and our own spirits as well. So welcome. I'm really excited you're all here. I think I'll switch to the speaker view. And if you'd like to visit and see more of the videos that I've created for this event, you can go to my YouTube channel or you can go to my website, camillablossom.com. And also if you want to know what's going on in the future, I invite you to sign up for my email list. So I'm really thrilled. In a few minutes, I'm going to be welcoming in these three special guests. But I also wanted to just share a little why I wanted to do this and why I wanted to invite the Fairy Congress Magic out in the community more. It really, for me, has been an event that I've been part of since I think 18 years off and on. And first as an attendee that came because my friend said I had to come. And when I first entered this world of the Fairy Congress, I was pretty blown away. It was something I had never experienced before. I think anyone that's gone will say the same, that there is some magic, there's some container of undescribable magic that happens to be there. And it works on you on so many different levels. I really found that it was like being initiated into the deeper magic of who I am, of my soul, who I came here to express. And so just the fact of going there, besides all the magical experiences and wisdom teachings and play and joy that is expressed at this event, where I could really feel like I could be myself, I did feel that it was a huge catalyst and initiation on my path. I started as an attendee and then became a presenter, and I presented a number of times on anything from mermaids to flower essences to land healing to fairies and dragons and elementals. And I was speaking to Jan a little before this too, and I think one of the things that touches me the most about this event is the people. And because these are our kin, and the connections I've made there have become long-lasting and solid, and people that understand me, that understand who I am. We understand each other without having to say anything. And this would happen all the time when I was at this event, and also connecting with people that are interested, like all of us here. So I'm really excited to just bring that magic in and share that I really feel the foundation of the work I'm doing was expanded and created through the magic of the Fairy Congress. And so I'm really grateful for that, and to share in any way that each one of us or this event can be a catalyst or a home or a sense of belonging. And besides the sense of the humanity that's here, this event really is, as we'll hear, the opening to this vast world that is magical, unseen world of the nature spirits, those spirits that animate the forests, that care for the waters, that are guardians of the earth. And so I think it really behooves us to make that stronger connection, even if we are very connected or not at all connected, to deepen that connection, that alliance with these spirits in whatever way you do that, so that we can build and evolve. My sense of these spirits are they are multidimensional, and they are evolving too, and they want to evolve with us. And so all these different beings, the elementals, the fairies, the the dragons, the gnomes, all the beings, the devas, they are seeking connection. And this beautiful evolution over these 20 years of this Fairy Congress has been really quite phenomenal. So I can see at this point in time, there's this kind of magic expansion of this event, of this work, of the fairy realms, of the relationships and co-creation that we can have. I'm just really excited to be part of this kind of global movement is the way I see it. So what I'd like to do just before I introduce our special guests is just do a little centering, so we're all kind of in the heart space together. So I invite you to kind of focus inward. And I'd like to start just giving an offering and honoring and acknowledging the Native ancestors for the lands that each one of us is on. You know, a lot of this fairy tradition does come through European or Germanic, Celtic, other cultures. And so it's really important for us, whatever land we are, wherever we are right now, just to honor and acknowledge those Indigenous and Native people that have cared for the land through time. And here where I live in Ridgefield, Washington, just north of Portland, it's the Cowlitz, the Chinook, and the Yakima. And you can just for a moment hold presence for the tribes from your area. So I'm going to put a pinch of tobacco on my altar here. And now I'd like to do an offering to the fairies, elementals, devas, the she, to the fairy race, Bigfoot, all the different beings, the plant spirits, crystal spirits, and the Mother Earth. And this is some mica and flower petals, and I want to make an offering on behalf of our circle to the fairy realms to open this and connect for each one of us in our circle in the way that we need, and ask permission to make this opening, this invitation, vibrant and joyful. And if you want to close your eyes for a moment, move into your body, and connect that light of your body down through your feet and your root chakra, deep into the planet, into Mother Earth, sending your love deep. Allowing yourself to fill up with that nourishment of light from her core, and intend to connect with the crystalline grid of Mother Earth. Just feel that connection, that you are connected with the whole communication system of the earth. And then bring that nourishment up into your body, connecting with your own crystalline grid, your own crystalline energy. And then open like a tree, a flower, your crown, your branches, and connect to the crystalline grid of the sun, the great central sun, and the cosmic sun. And let that energy flow into your body. Open that vertical alignment, heaven and earth. And then we anchor in each of the directions and each of the elements and the elementals. The Mer, the water beings, the Fae, the beings of air, Pele, the dragons and beings of fire, and Gnome, the beings of the earth. We anchor each of the directions and allow those elements and elementals to fill and nourish our bodies. And let's bring our hearts into connection, imagining your heartbeat connecting in circle, woven together with this whole circle, connected to Mother Earth, all the fairy realms. We invite the Deva of the Fairy Congress to join us and connect to the heartbeat of her or him. So we'll synchronize that heartbeat. And just for a moment, feel that energy of your own fairy guides, your own team of spirits that work with you to be part of this as well as we open. So take a deep breath, and super excited to introduce this amazing team of amazing trine of spirits that are such an important part of bringing this work to the world. So I really want to honor and have you honor each one of these people. And we'll first start with an introduction, and then we'll have some time to sink in and hear more of the stories, ask questions, learn a little more about Fairy Congress and its evolution and where it's ready to go next. So why don't we start with Michael Pilarski, if you want to begin.
Yes, and I put on one of my fairy costumes here, but it's a little bit of glittery. And it's okay at the Fairy Congress to be glittery and showy. And some people wear costumes. Some people just dress very drably. It's all kinds. But color is a big part of the gathering. And so is singing. So I thought I'd just start out with one of our songs we sing every time we get together since the song got invented, but it goes, calling all fairies, calling all fairies, wake up the humans, wake up the humans, calling all humans, calling all humans, send love to the fairies, send love to the fairies. So anyway, gotta have a little song in our life. I love that Camilla mentioned, joy and just the play and the magic of the Fairy Congress, because it's one of the funnest things. It ranks up there as one of the funnest things I've ever done in my life. It's like being at these gatherings is a high point of life for me, when you're together with like hundreds of other people. And I've been together with thousands of other people, even sometimes, that are really aware of the spirit realm and connecting with it. And it's just such a lovely thing to be with. Some people have bicycle rallies. There's also all these ways for people to get together with their own kind, but there's nothing like the Fairy Congress. And so my personal introduction, I'm going to go way back. I was raised a Catholic as a child, 11 years of Catholic school, huge amounts of indoctrination. And I say it really helped, in a sense, set me up for belief in fairies, because you're trained to believe in angels and saints and miracles, God and spirits, prophecies, all these things. And so it helped. Perhaps it helps. The Dalai Lama once said he doesn't care what kind of spirituality or religion people had, but he hopes they had one at any rate. And that's so I rejected Catholicism and the idea of church and became an atheist as a young man and said, there is no spirit. I don't, it's all superstition. It's all a hoax. It's meant to keep us down. And at one point, I fell in love with a woman who was very metaphysically inclined. And I said, asked her to help me understand what she was thinking about. And she gave me autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And that book changed my life. And I started on a spiritual path, including all of these belief in just about anything. I like to say I'm one of the most gullible people I know. I'll believe almost anything. And there's a few things, sometimes it gets too far fetched for me, but I have a lot of possibility to entertain um, spiritual ideas and beings. And so someone gave me a book called A True Fairy Tale in somewhere about 1977, 79, actually maybe 79, 77, A True Fairy Tale by Daphne Charters. And that changed my life and put me on the path of serving the fairies. So the fairies are one of my clients, you might say. Actually, they're one of my bosses. um, and so at one point, I was inspired to start the Fairy and Human Relations Congress, and I've been there ever since. And so that's just my personal introduction, and I'll just pass it on to Lindsey. Actually, would pass it on to Lindsey Swope. I will say, I'll just pass it on to Lindsey because she's been at every single one of the congresses as well as I have.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with a story. The way I got into the Fairy Congress, I have a bachelor's degree in geology and a master's degree in geography. So I've been an earth person from a very young age. And I always had this calling that I knew I was supposed to somehow help the earth. And I actually thought I was trained to work in natural resource management, but what ended up happening was I bought this piece of land in the Meta Valley that became Scalitude Retreat. And so the name Scalitude is actually from the Salish language, and it refers to a state of being where humans and nature are in harmony, such that the veils between the worlds dissolve and magic and beauty are everywhere. So that was the intent of Scalitude Retreat. So I was living there. It's pretty much in the wilderness at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by Forest Service land. I was living there by myself. And one very dark February day, I just happened to get a book on, it was like a intro to Wicca book out of the library. And it said, oh, the quarter moon is a good day or a good time to make an offering to the fairies. And I was like, oh, well, I've got nothing else to do. It's dark and cold and I'm bored, so I'll go make an offering to the fairies. So I brought out some dried flowers and incense and some cake. And I just said, hi, this is my intent for this land where humans can learn to be in harmony with nature. And if you can help, that would be lovely. And then 2 days later, Skeeter called me. We had met previously, and he said, oh, I want to hold this Fairy and Human Relations Congress. And I'm wondering if we can do it at your place. I was like, well, I don't think I can say no, having asked the fairies. So yes, I've been involved from the very beginning. And yeah, since then, I taken over a lot of the organization. I tend to be kind of behind the scenes of the event itself, but I'm the registrar. So I'm in a way the gatekeeper. I meet everybody as they come in, but then I am not very visible while there.
Oh, come on now. That's not true. Yeah.
Anyway, that's me. And I'll pass it on to Jan, who is
Wow, I'm
our
Jan.
community
Camilla,
manager.
thank you for doing this. This is really interesting, and it's really interesting looking back at 20 years. So I got involved. So first of all, I grew up in Norway. My mother's Norwegian. I spent a lot of time out in the wilderness, out in the woods. A lot of that had to, but anyway, it was interesting because I always had the feeling that I was being watched out for. Like there were forest beings. I felt very comfortable swimming out in the fjords and sailing. And I knew that fairies existed and that they were there. It was just that sense. And I grew up reading the Norwegian fairy tales, which always seemed to have an underlying theme in that when you work with nature, when you work with the beings of nature, everything works harmoniously. And if you don't do that, if you don't give an offering to the dwarf of your farm, kind of all hell will break loose. Like the crops will fail and everything will freeze and the cows, you know. So I kind of grew up with that somehow that became an intrinsic part of me, even though my family is completely military and little right wing. I somehow kind of grew up with that. So coming here, I was reading, there was a book that got handed to me, and it was Dorothy McLean, To Hear the Angels Sing, and it was her experiences at Findhorn. And I always thought, okay, great, if we can work in harmony with nature, we can create some amazing things. So Findhorn created these amazing gardens way up in Scotland. This shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be growing citrus fruits up in, north, where the north wind blows everything over. And somebody gave me a flyer, I think it was 2003, Dorothy McLean was going to be speaking at Findhorn, at Scalitude, at the Fairy Congress, and I went, and I've been there ever since. And, and I took some, and immediately I knew that this gathering was really powerful. And after I had been there were some certain things that happened that first time that were, I have these like activations, and I contacted everybody that I had met there and said, okay, can we get together on the quarter cycles and just practice this? Like, how do we work with the fairies, and how do we make flower essences? And I did that with Fanny, and then that kind of turned into the Fairy Congress. I was a council, because it's like, okay, we need to keep this going, and how do we get this organized? So that was kind of how I came involved, and I've carried different hats. To me it's been a surprisingly, I've learned a lot. I'm a shamanic practitioner. I do hands-on healing work. And just a lot of the guidance that I've had has come through the Fairy Congress in terms of how do we work with the spirits of nature? How do we do land clearing? How do we do a lot of the nature spirits that I work with have come through. I've met them at the Fairy Congress, or that was how we created a really strong relationship. But I've been also really amazed at the community. I've learned a lot. There's been a lot of shifts, but there's been a congress on the human level, and I've been really amazed at the people that I've met. It's just like it's such a strong. The people are really I love the people that show up there. There's not a lot of strong egos running around, or people that, my way's the right way to do things. There's a good group of people. There's a sense of cooperation. There's Anyway, I'm really thrilled to be part of it. I think it's been a very yeah, powerful group. So I'm going to pass this back to Camilla.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see how you all have entered into this, and I'd love to just hear more about either stories or experiences you've had there. Also, I don't know, Skeeter, you want to share some of the history at this?
Actually, I would love to share some of the history,
Okay.
you know, and I'll try to make it relatively quick, but this may be useful for not only the people listening, but people otherwise. Um, so that most people think of the history of the Fairy and Human Relations Congress as starting in 2001 when we had that first one at Lindsey's place. But actually, the inspiration for the event and the name of it is all the way back to 1955 or so. A woman named Daphne Charters, I mentioned that she produced this true fairy tale, and this was published in 1956, first time. And she reports on something called a Fairy and Human Relations Congress, and they had the first one on her property. And the story goes something like this: she was talking to her local fairies about, her international travel and other places, and the fairy said, "Well, we'd like to get together with fairies from other parts of the world because we're pretty much stationed here in England, and we don't get out." And so Daphne and the fairies cooked up this idea, and the fairies took it to their superiors, so to speak, the next hierarchy up, and they said, "Well, we'll get back to you." And they pass it up the chain of command until some high mucky muck Davis said, "That's a good idea. We'll do it." Pass the word back down. And so they said, okay, that on a certain date, all these fairies would show up from around the world, and there'd be, some conference MCs of some higher magnitude devas to keep order in the situation. And 3,000 fairies came from all around the world. Daphne and a couple of her discarnate allies were the only humans present. It was pretty much, and the theme of it was how can we help solve the human problem? The human problem, the humans are really being a problem in the world. What can we do to help get things back on track? And so the idea was fairies wanting to reach out to humans and communicate with us that we needed to sort of wake up and get our act together. And they were wanting to help us do that. And so they had these events all the way, we have reports all the way back up to 1985. So 35 years in the fairy realm, these were held. And by the time the last account we have from Daphne, who is observing all these, and it was 1985, and it was said that 200,000 fairies attended that one. So it had really grown to this very large international symposium, you might say, or get together of fairies talking about how to communicate with humans on a better level to improve things. And so I read that story, and along in 2001, I was inspired to actually have one on the physical realm to keep carrying on the work. I don't know what happened between 85 and 2001, but that's when we started ours. And the numbers of humans that have attended, we started at 175, quickly went up to 300, have been between 250 and 300 most of the time. That's the number of humans, but the number of fairies that are involved, we get staggering reports. But we don't want to, don't know what to believe. But there are obviously, every year it appears more and more fairy beings attend of different kinds of realms. And over the years, Sasquatch took a few years, maybe that someone tuned into Sasquatch, and then dragons showed up on the scene, et cetera, et cetera. And as R.J. Stewart likes to say, well, you can call them all fairies, or they're all the fairy realm, but there are many beings in the fairy realm, and we can just lump them under the word fairy. And so that's what I'm kind of doing. But at any rate, so all these beings show up as well as the humans. All of you who are on this call that have been there are, you can recognize that feeling that comes. So at any rate, and here we are after 18 years at Scalitude, 2 years in Hood River, Oregon, right next to Camilla. That was lovely being at Hood River for 2 years. But now, next year, we're going to move somewhere else, and it looks like Western Washington. But things are just too up in the air because of the whole COVID thing to say for sure. But we really hope that next summer we will be meeting in person with a good sized gathering again. And so there's this year, to round out the history, I must say that this year was COVID year, so we had to cancel the big event. It just wasn't, um, the authorities just would not stand for that, something that big that, we would be public about. So 60 of us did get together though, that were sort of like the inner core, and some, and some new people. But so we had a very small personal one, and you'll hear about our global one in January 15th to 17th coming up. We'll do some promo for that. So at any rate, there's a snapshot of the history. If
Thank you.
anybody wants to add anything, that's, yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I think one of the compelling things to me is like what a strong intention for the origins of this event, that it wasn't about just people wanting to do what they wanted to do, but it came through the fairy realm. And I was wondering if Jan maybe wants to speak on that, or Lindsey, about like how the Fairy Congress might be different from some of the other events that are going on, because I really feel there's some, that origin, how that speaks, and something really different about what this is compared to some other ways people relate with fairy. So if you want to speak on that.
I'll speak on that too. Yeah, a little something, because something Jan said, that there aren't a lot of egos running around, and that's something that I've or that's become very strong, like on the Fairy Council, because we've had numerous people kind of join the council through the years and then drop away. And I found that one of the big, I don't know, filters, I guess, is when you're on the council, it's really not about ego. Like if you have some great idea, it's like, oh, we should really do this. It's like you have to be prepared that it may not happen. Maybe nobody else gets on board, maybe the fairies don't like it. But anyway, it's like, it's not about you manifesting your ideas, it's about serving the vision. And it's true that really, we're co-creating this with the fairies. So listening is really the key skill, to know where we're going and what we're doing. We have to be able to listen for the guidance. And as Skeeter said, the fairies are really almost, it feels like they're our boss more than. So we do feel like, because sometimes the fairies are like, oh, you should do this, and it's like, okay, then we have to figure out how to do it. Jan, you want to add anything?
Well, there's a strong force that is behind the scenes, and it's so interesting how every year we have a theme, we have workshops and rituals that go in line with the theme. So Camilla's question about how we differ from other festivals. When you look at other fairy festivals, there's a lot of like this romanticized, the Lord of the Rings garb, or the people get into costumery, and which is all well and great. But this is really, and we've kind of worked with like, God, do we keep the title of this, Fairy and Human Relations Congress? Because a lot of people think, when they hear fairy, they think it's a costume, event. And this is really, okay, how do we work with the spirits of nature? How do we co-create? And this whole event is co-creative. And I have to say, it's pretty amazing sometimes, like when I think back on what we created with a small team, that we got the who's who in nature spirits, the David Spangler and the Fintorn people and the Orion Foxwood and R.J. Stewart and everybody who's kind of written the main books on nature spirits, on Celtic fairy tradition, they've been at the Fairy Congress. So we're on the map as doing really good work and really kind of groundbreaking, you know, like solid groundbreaking. And at the same time, we can have fun. We can be frolicking in the fields, and there's a sense of joy and a sense of love that comes through the Congress. But also, I think if you have, okay, and I'm on a roll here, when you've got people's like energy feels open with joy, and then you teach them co-creative gardening, and you teach them how to work with Sasquatches, and you have them meet their fairy helpers and their ancestor helpers, it sinks in so much deeper. That I think that's why sometimes I walk away from these events going like, God, I'm glowing. Like, this is really powerful. Like the rituals we do, and we're kind of like, we're not really that trained in all, you know, alchemical ritual, but it ends up being very, this is kind of a folk magic that we're bringing back. And I also have to say, this has been a way for us to reclaim our own, you know, most of us are Northern European. We've been able to kind of reclaim our ancestral spirituality, which was very, you know, kind of folk magic, if in a kind of a Northern Celtic European way. And once we got that in, then the people who were Native American started showing up. They started showing up in kind of equal footing. Because when you get white people that have lost their cultural spirituality, they grab onto something else. I think when you have a spirituality, that's in alignment with your ancestors, it becomes, you know, it flows in your blood. It's become a little stronger. So I think there's something that's really strong. There's a current that goes through the Fairy Congress that is alive, and it's joyful, and it's powerful, and we've kind of tapped into that, and we surf that one. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I see Skeeter's got his hand up.
Well, I was just can I just add something here too? I'm just really happy you brought this up, and it's actually in the January event. I'm going to be doing work with this, that lineage, that there's almost a taboo or misrepresentation of the fairy realms, the fairies in our culture. And because of so much persecution in our ancestry and repression, we haven't really been allowed to remember this part of it. It's like 20 years and more, like, is this opportunity for us to, I even look at it as, oh, this is my original religion as a European heritage, Celtic, Germanic person. Like, this is part of the lineage, and to be able to remember who we are through these practices, and also find peace, like you say, coming from another land, is really powerful. So, Peter, you want to jump in? Michael?
Skeeter, you gotta unmute, Skeeter.
Sorry. So no one's mentioned the word love yet. And that's one of the big things about the Fairy Congress is the sense of love is just about as strong as you're going to get anywhere. The amount of love between people, the open-hearted acceptance, the amount of love that's flowing from the fairy realm to us is just incredibly huge. So the love is thick in the air, and love, you know, feeds the heart and our whole being. And so that's one of the, I think, strong resonances that why people love the Fairy Congress.
Yeah, I would like to open to questions. I tried to send a comment, but it just went to Sylvia alone. So yeah, if there's any questions too, feel free to put them in comments, to ask them of any one of us. or all of us. I know Jan we were talking beforehand, and that idea of like, what that surprised you about the Congress? Like, do you have stories of things that were really surprising that you've experienced there, or how you got involved in fairies? Or also, I'm kind of interested in this idea of like, over this 20-year span, a lot of us have been going for a long time, others are just coming into it. Like, what has shifted in your experience of the fairies, of working with them, or in your life, in your practical world? There are a few jumping off points, but feel free to add whatever you feel is coming in that you would like to share. Yeah.
I'm going to jump off on what Michael Pilarski said about love. And I remember, so I'd been, helping out with the Fairy Congress for a number of years. And I kept on going back because I was, just like, I just love this group. And, but I would have these re-entry parties at my place in Seattle, and we would take these Kawhi was doing these amazing photos, and we would like show them up on the side of the house, and of course I'm asking people like, how was the Fairy Congress? What was it that you liked about the Fairy Congress? How was it? And some of the comments I got were kind of interesting because my mission was to like help people help people grow Findhorn gardens, right? That was like my mission, like how to work with gnomes. But I wasn't anticipating people saying, "Wow, do you sing and dance all the time? Are you in a state of constant joy? Is that how you live your life? Is that?" And I'm like, I remember like there was 3 guys in their 50s. These guys were straight. They were in their 50s, and they all said like, "Wow, I have never experienced so much love in my life." And the 3 of them were like, "Yeah." Now that says a lot about the Congress. It also says a lot about our culture. But that I feel like the fairies have been behind the scenes teaching us about song and teaching us about dance and teaching us about community, because I feel like sometimes I wonder when Daphne Charters had her when you have the 200,000 fairies trying to figure out what to do with the human problem, they were like, yeah, these people don't have community, and I feel like they've been teaching us not just about how to co-create gardens, but they've been teaching us about community. I'm getting teary-eyed.
Well, I'll maybe go with a couple of stories. I said, oh, there are so many stories, but I'm just this is a couple of what's happened there. And this is one time Brooke Medicine Eagle was leading us in a big ceremony, the whole group in rapt attention. And David Spangler was sitting with his wife, Julie, on a hillside under a tree, observing, not really being in the circle. So they were some distance away. And David Spangler, as many of you know, has got a very good third eye, so to speak, and second sight. And he's watching the whole scene down there. And at one point he says to Julie, he says, "Oh, white buffalo calf woman just showed up. Has she been mentioned?" And Julie says, "No, he doesn't hear that good." So Julie says, his ears, she said, "No, Brooke hasn't mentioned her." And like 3 seconds later, Brooke Medicine Eagle called in white buffalo calf woman to the gathering, and she had already appeared. David, saw her wink in. And during the ceremony, we were casting prayers into the fire or things that we were done with. And as we threw these pieces of paper in the fire, he observed all these, and like they went up in this smoke and particulate matter, you might say, but that this was being vacuumed up by a whole ring of angels up there. There's all this angelic activity whooshing it away and working with all, taking those prayers and working with them. And so that was, and he those were the several of the things he mentioned that really stuck in my head. So he has a second sight and can see what's going on. And over the years, I've had dozens of people mention one thing or another to me about what they saw. And I remember my friend Sid Tayal talking about when we were doing a big circle one time, he could see that above us was all these rings into the sky of a giant amphitheater situation with really large beings at the top and fewer, and then numerous beings. So there is rank upon rank of other realm beings going up into the sky, and there's a lot of them, and it was just and they're very big ones at the top. So there's all these different size gradients, and uh, and then as well an amphitheater below ground in the same kind of a situation. Only the amphitheater is going into the ground rather than just into the air. So we're at the center of these two amphitheaters of beings participating and paying attention to what we're doing. So those were, a couple of things, and I'll mention one more and then see what Lindsey or Jan might want to add, or anybody else actually, is that so I would say that one of the ways uh, that we kind of, in a sense, can capture this, that there's these other beings there, is through the photography of orbs. I remember in the um, and I think maybe the second or third year, this guy showed up and he took a photo of this very large orb, like human size, well, maybe half human size. It was a very large orb. It had a figure inside of it, a blue-green figure, shimmering, kind of, not really solid. And it just hovered in the air, and he took pictures of it. And it changed his life at that point. He was like, holy Toledo, didn't know like things like this existed. And over the years, there was more and more digital cameras, and huge amounts, thousands, I would say now by now, thousands of photos have been snapped, filled with one orb, mini orbs, groups of orbs. And at the fairy parade and Saturday evening after the ritual is our high point of energy. The humans really hoop it up, and we just dance through the whole place and just are wild. And all the fairies, show up. It's like they don't want to miss that. So pretty much everybody makes that on both sides of the veil. And the photos have orbs so thick that it's like looking through milk. It's like you can see layers upon layers upon layers of orbs. The film, you can see the people and the action of the physical realm, but it's overlaid with hundreds and thousands of orbs per photo sometimes. So that shows that some people would take that as that, orbs are one of the ways that we're able to capture uh, these other entities. And I'll just mention that Hope and Randy Mead came one time, and they put out a movie on a video documentary on orbs. And I hope it's still out there somewhere, but I haven't tried to look for it lately. Hope and Randy Mead, a video about orbs. So anyway, there's a couple stories.
Thanks for sharing those. Jan and Lindsey, do you want to?
I'll just have one really quick one that's, I don't know, it's was someone else's experience, but this was also from, maybe I want to say the third or somewhere. It's amazing actually to consider that we have 20 years of history here, but going back, maybe it was the third, maybe it was the sixth. I know it was at Scalitude, but there was somebody there who was a light worker, who was very plugged in to the planetary scene. And his comment after the Saturday night ritual was like, wow, this place, this event at this place was the brightest place on the planet at this time. That we were generating so much light and love and joy that we were just like this beacon on the whole planet. It's like, and that really impressed me. But yeah, someone saw that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yep.
I've had experiences myself personally of going into that state of enlightenment and bliss where you're just like everything is beautiful and perfect. And I've had that a number of times, being on the land at Scalitude, being at the Fairy Congress, being around this energy. So I think, like Skeeter's saying, the energy of love is just radiating so thick, and all of this interaction and these beings, it really brings transcendence. It's a container of this magical nature, love, connected energy. It's kind of like a template for what we've been creating. Like, we've been helping create these new earth, these new worlds of fourth, fifth, higher dimensions, as we've been in the third dimension. So in a sense, we're like the visionaries of creating these collective experiences. Ron, did you want to share your story?
Camilla, can you speak a little closer to your
Yeah,
microphone?
I'm saying it's mine. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Well, the other thing I just wanted to share too was an interesting thing about dragons. There was different beings we were working with a lot. And I remember at one time, Skeeter, you had really felt like the dragons were upset and they didn't feel like we were representing fire, that we were really claiming the element of fire. I don't know if this is maybe after a few years, and I think it was a time when there was more interaction with dragons, and there's more dragons coming into the earth and working with people. And as we've seen, that's really mushroomed over these 20 years. But that was an interesting experience. How at different times, different kinds of beings and make themselves like, we want more participation, we want more awareness, we want people to work with us. And I think what I'm noticing another group is like the she, which I'd love to have you speak on any group of beings. The she is also,
Camilla, a little closer to the microphone.
okay, the
Yeah.
she was the fairy race, a group that at the beginning we weren't working with as much, and then more and more awareness about them has come forward. So I'm going to let you speak because it sounds like my microphone isn't working too well. So I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, better, check on that mic and get that mic working good. Before the next one, this is okay, but you want to get, be able to have it work good for your seminars. I'll maybe one other thought I had on the seeing of the beings is that I mentioned that I would say that over every year there's people that tell me stories but don't speak them in the general circle. So there's every year there's people that see things that are seers, but a lot of times they don't actually sort of like you say share them. They just sort of hold them. And then there's a lot of hearing. We do a lot of meditations where we say, okay, let's tune in and hear what any of our fairies might want to come and talk to you, or what kind of beings. And so we do a lot of listening, and a lot of people get messages. And during circles, sometimes we share some of those. In the past, we used to have a basket with papers and pens, and sometimes we would get like 80 messages in a Congress that were written down. And so it was pretty common that people hear things or maybe see things with their inner eye, and then almost everyone feels the connections happening, feels the other beings, and you get goosebumps and shivers and joy spasms and things like that. But there's a really strong sense of feeling. So almost everybody in some way connects with these other realms while they're at the Congress. Hard not to.
I had one friend who actually I didn't meet her when she came to the Congress, and then I met her somewhere else later. But we were talking and she said, oh yeah, I came to the Congress. I came, she's interested. She came and she saw a fairy on her first day, and it freaked her out so much. I think she spent the weekend, but she's like too afraid to come back. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad, but it was amazing that someone who wasn't even wanting to see a fairy saw one, because there's so many of us who are like, oh, I'd love to see a fairy, but I never do. So yeah, things happen there. And I'm wondering, speaking of that, shall I lead a quick meditation? Yeah. So this is my favorite. I call it my quick and dirty way to check in with the fairy realm. It's I guess, you know, for me, I often have this notion that meditation is something that, you know, is done very seriously and you have to really focus and concentrate and have quiet. But this is a meditation I do when I'm out and about in the world. So I do it in city parks. I've done it on a ski trail. I do it when there's lots of people around. It's just a way for me to drop down and see what's happening in the other realm. And so there's 3 parts. The first 2 parts are just tune-ins. And the first part is kind of similar to what we did with Camilla in the beginning. And then the meditation itself, so there's this concept that's based in the traditional fairy lore that, you know, we exist on the surface of this planet with our feet on the ground and our head in the sky, but we have a mirror image in the fairy realm. So there's us here, and then there's this other being underneath who is in the fairy realm. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect to that, go down into this being. And what I do when I drop down into it, instead of trying to think about looking upside down, I just kind of flip the image and say, okay, because if I'm in this person's head, everything looks right side up. So just like, don't worry about being too detail oriented with that. So let's all just get comfortable in your seat. Close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. Coming back to your feeling body. So just taking your awareness into your heart, your solar plexus, the center of your being, and just drop a ribbon of light down through your legs into the earth. And just moving at the speed of light to the center of the earth and plugging yourself in to that core of the planet and draw that energy back up, that cord of light into your body, just filling your body with that blue-green earth light. Feel yourself becoming a vessel made of light. And then sending that cord of light up through past the level of the moon, past the level of the sun and planets of our solar system, and out into the stars. And then plugging it into source, that light source, origin of everything. And bringing that light back down through the stars, through the solar system and sun, planets, and back to the level of the moon, and back down into your body, filling that vessel of earth light with the starlight. Feeling an earth light and starlight mix. And then feeling into your own unique self-light. The self-light arises from that mixture of earth light and starlight. And then let that, your self-light, just kind of drop down, feeling that your underworld self. So the underworld self is like this orb of light beneath your feet. We're just going to draw that light up into your legs, feeling the element of earth through your body and your bones, through your legs, and then up to your belly, feeling the element of water in your belly and all the fluids in your body, your blood, all the other fluids, and then up to the level of your heart, feeling the element of fire in your nervous system. And up to the level of your head, feeling the element of air, of your thoughts. Finally, up above your head, feeling the element of ether that surrounds you, your aura. And then we move back down, just Back down to element of air, and fire, and water in the belly, earth in the legs. So now we're fully attuned to our self-light, to our underworld self. And then bring your awareness into your eyes. Just feeling your 2 eyeballs resting in their sockets. And we're going to roll the eyes back like marbles. Roll them back to the center of your head. And then they drop down through your neck. And just roll them on down through your body, through your legs. And then they move through the legs of your underworld self, through the torso, and into the eyes of your underworld self. And at this point, you can just kind of flip your imagery and open your eyes and just notice what you see. You may see beings, you may see colors, you may just feel things, but just tune in. Just taking a look around. Again, this can be just a quick check-in. And then rolling the eyes back up or down through the underworld self. They roll through the torso, through the legs, and then they come up through the legs of your upper world self, up through the torso, and back into your eye sockets. And then just take a deep breath. Make sure you're all the way back. And then you can open your physical eyes. So again, that was my quick and dirty. I'm just going to give you a few examples of things I've seen, because what I love about this is doing it lots of different places, and then you really start to hone that sense. It's like, using a different muscle. So I've done it here where I live in the Columbia River, and I just felt like I was in a worm in a mud puddle. Like, I was just like, I had my open mouth, and like there was water and earth kind of just moving through me, coming out the other end. And that was just it. I was a worm in a mud puddle. I've done it at a rock outcropping. It's like this rock that overlooks the river valley. And when I first went down, I felt like I was floating in space, and I had to go down, down, down till I felt the surface of the planet. And then I felt like I was more in a deep forest, but it was just interesting how I first felt like I was up in the air, and then I had to ground. I did this when I went to Scotland last year, and that was amazing. There was one place in the forest where I went down, and there were so many little happy beings. It was like a big party. And first I started looking at them all, and they were like, hi, hi. So then I kind of grew arms, and I started touching them all and saying, hi, hi. And then they all wanted to hug, so I had to start hugging them all. And it was just a big party. And other places, I was at this old growth cedar grove in Montana. And I feel like I connected into a fairy king and queen, because these cedar groves were so majestic, and they were very quiet, but I could just feel this, serious, solid power. So anyway, yeah, I invite you to just try this, lots of different places, and get a sense for who's out there. Does anybody else have an experience they want to share right now? Anybody have anything that, anything they didn't expect?
Yeah, we'll open it up. I'd love to hear from Annie. Did you want to share something? Or you're muted.
The Fairy Congress has always been so amazing. Anyway, that meditation you just did, Lindsey, was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, every time I've been to Fairy Congress, I get opened up to new things that I didn't know that I knew. It's like teachings are instantly in me, where I have abilities to do things that I would have never imagined. So it's kind of addictive. And I'm sorry I took as long as I did to first come, because if possible, I never want to miss a Fairy Congress. Who knows what will unfold next time?
Anyone else have, I don't know if my sound is very good, but anyone else?
You're better now. I think it was just an internet issue.
Yeah, I do have issues here. So, or any questions? And also, if Lindsey and Jan and Skeeter, if you want to talk a little bit about January, this is a whole new adventure to be doing something online this way. Of course, for all of us, we're experiencing that this whole year, but I think there's something really like, it's definitely different not being together in person and connected in that on the land, but I think there's something else that can happen that's really magical to spread this mission, this work, this love all over. So yeah, Lindsey or Jan or Michael.
I'll start out because I am very excited because, you know, before we did have this beautiful place up in the Methow, but it's quite hard to get to. So it really limited, you know, the number of people that got to come experience it. So now being online, it does feel like this amazing opportunity to really expand our network and our the potential of what we're able to do. And what I'm really excited is that, you know, the fairies, of course, helped us come up with the structure of it so that it's not just going to be workshops, because there's certainly so many sort of workshops and videos that you can watch now. But we really want to emphasize the interactive part of it, because that is part, you know, that's what makes Congress so different, is that we're a Congress, not a conference. You know, and a Congress really is about everyone coming together and contributing their piece. It's not just about, oh, here's these people talking and you're all listening. It's about all of us sharing and connecting. So the structure of the online event will continue with that part of our mission. And then the other really exciting thing is that it's not just the weekend, but that we have an online community that will come out of it. So it's not just that, you know, you have this amazing event and then you're off back into your life and you're isolated, and then something happens and you don't know who to talk to, that you have this community that will continue through the year. And that is really exciting to me, because that's actually a comment that we've had a lot at the Congress. It's like everyone gets so excited, you know, the Congress itself is so transformational, but then everyone goes home. It's like, well, how do we connect through the year? And we've never really found a way to do that in a meaningful way. But I think we've come up with an answer or a solution to that. So I'm really excited, because there is something, even with any relationship, it's like, it's that connection through time. Even if you connect for a half an hour a week, you'll end up being a lot closer to someone than if you only see them once a year. That there's the journey and the deepening that can happen through repeated meetings. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, and this particular thing with Camilla does a series of classes, and everyone helps build the fairy knowledge in, you know, in our circles in the world. And Jan does a series of classes as well, shamanic trainings, and that is another way of tuning in. And we want to do at least one workshop a month. And if Jan and Camilla and others in our circle have ongoing things like David Spangler, RJ Stewart, there's many people, and that goes on and on. There's so many of our fairy presenters that come to our events or not, but people that are connected, that are doing online things. We would like to be able to point people to what's going on out there, what's available, and offer a series of workshops ourselves. So we're lining up really good presenters to do something at least once a month, and we'll probably tell people about, besides sponsoring one or two things a month, we'll also help publicize other people's offerings. So the world, it's sort of like there are so many movements in the world today to you might say, a lot of people feel we're in a crisis period, and there's a lot of circles working on trying to come up with how to help get out of the crises. And we're the fairy movement, as it were, or the connection with the other realms, is one of those international and worldwide movements that is not, there's no top-down leadership. There's nobody like calling all the shots, so to speak. In humanity, we're not organized. The Fairy Congress is one attempt to organize some of the fairy people in our circle. And so this global webinar, or not webinar, but this global Congress is, we hope, will build a ongoing, more of an ongoing community over with that involves more people, so they can serve more people, and more people can be inspired, informed, get their education furthered, and build a community of people that like each other and know each other. And like on this call right here, half the people at any rate are part of our Fairy Congress circle. And now you're all sort of like linked in. So any rate, so we hope that the global thing will really reach a lot more people over time. And so it's gonna be interesting to see if we can, if any of you that are listening to this will go out and tell other people. And it costs $97 to attend this event, which is a month's worth of viewing. And then you can, if you pay $197, then you're part of the whole thing for the whole year. That's our current setup that we're trying out. But if you got a couple of friends that are into this and sat down with you for this 18 hours of our Congress and worked with them, you could all split the cost. And if you got 2 or 3 people or something to sit around on your Zoom call, you can create your own little community there and make it less expensive. So anyway, I'm just encouraging you all to reach out to others. And if they're in other places, they can tune in by themselves. But the more people, the merrier. And I have one last comment from the fairies. When we started out, Camilla, one of the fairies said to me, "Oh, we don't really have to use Zoom. We have our own networks. We don't want to, we don't want to get exposed to that yucky radiation and stuff." So at any rate, the fairies have their own system. But I'm curious to learn more about how the fairies, like, we're all seeing each other's faces here, or names in this little subset. And how many the fairies don't have, we don't have, if we had all of our fairy allies in here, it'd be just so cluttered at screen. But there's, in this small group, there's actually a lot of beings represented. How are the beings at this global Congress, how are they going to interface with our community as we interface via Zoom? They're interfacing in a you might say a parallel network, just on the other side. So I don't know how that's going to happen, but we'll have to ask the fairies what that looks like.
Yeah, there was a question too from Sylvia about if any of the beings had anything asking like that, an overall message. Are you having trouble hearing me again? The overall message from the fairy realms?
they're ready and waiting and willing, and the door's open. They want to communicate. They want to work together with us. And if you want to go out and talk to fairies, there's no better time than today. They are really trying to remove blocks on their side as much as possible. And it's interesting. I will maybe make one more comment. I'm going to mention two things here. I guess we have a few minutes left. One of the things I do is I have a fairy library, and I just got 4 more fairy books in the last 2 days. And I'm about to do I don't know if you can see my piles here of fairy books, but I have, I'm setting up here to do a whole bunch of book reviews, like dozens of book reviews of recently published books on fairies. And I already did publish a bibliography of 60 books on fairies in the book 40 Years with the Fairies. So this is Daphne Charters. This is her more expanded writings from that 1956 publication, but this is a lot of her collected writings. And so it's a good, in here I review 60 other books. And my goal in the next month or so is to review another 60 books or so that I think that are good contributions to the literature. And one of the ones I just read I'm reading right at the moment that just showed up, is this book, Deva, Our Relationship with the Subtle World, by Jacqueline E. Lane. I don't know if it's a backward for all of you too, but I don't know. But Jacqueline Lane. And one comment she's made, it's a very metaphysical book. She spends a lot of her time just talking about how metaphysics works, and a lot of messages some messages from the devas as well. But one of the things she says is that she finds it much easier to connect with the large landscape devas than with the small devas in your backyard. They all have, you can connect with all of them, you can see all of them, it's all possible, but you might say the larger landscape beings, angels, devas, are very cognizant and aware of what's happening in their realm. And if you say hello and really send them a pointed request to converse, and really light yourself up and with intent to talk to that landscape deva, it's really good to have line of sight. Like if you're out in the, looking at a mountain or a hill or a valley or a stream or a river, Pacific Ocean, you can, various scales. If you really want to communicate, a lot of times you can make a connection with a higher being than you can with one of the little fairy beings who are not, you might say, they don't have as much experience, qualifications, so to speak, as the bigger ones. So a lot of times we're kind of scared of talking to the bigger devas. Be like, oh, they're too big. How little lowly me? How can I talk to them? I'll just try to communicate with the local fairies, give offerings in my backyard, and sort of stay at that scale. But I think I would say do try more and more often to make a connection with these larger landscape devas and see what happens for you. We'll see if Jacqueline's right or not. We'll compare notes next year, Camilla.
I wanted to go back, just that question of general questions from the fairies or whatever. So anyway, the message that I've been getting most often recently is the importance of joy, of just finding any way, or finding and also really acknowledging and deepening your sense of joy in your everyday life. That the more joyful you are, that really keeps your vibrations higher, and that makes it easier for you to talk to them. It's kind of like, they're at this vibration and we're somewhere we can vary, we can be really depressed, we can be more happy. So the more joyful you are, the closer you get to them, and then the easier it is for you to communicate.
Thank you. I'll just add to that David Spangler recently wrote a long essay about joy versus happiness and the difference. He says that, happiness comes and goes, sorrows come and go, but the goal, what you should always be striving for, is to always be joyful. to keep joy that you're alive, that I'm embodied, I'm having this experience. That's a great honor. It's a great privilege. It's a wonderful opportunity. And no matter how bad things are, that you can still find joy. Work on that. And he said, David's had a lot of health challenges in the last decade or a couple of decades. He's had various cancers. He's had a lot of operations. And he says, he's upfront about this in this essay. He says, that going through these operations, and sometimes there's just so much pain. It's just like I've been seeing so much pain. He says it's hard to be happy when you're in that much pain. And happiness comes and goes, but the joy, he really works on always having that joy in spite of anything else going on. So I thought that was a really nice lesson from David Spangler. You got that, joy.
Thank you. Yeah. Jan.
Back to the question about what the messages from the fairies, I think, when this is so interesting talking about the Fairy Congress here, because we've been doing this for 20 years. And one thing I've noticed is that there's been different waves. Like we had one year or a couple of years where dragons really showed up. And you could feel other beings like on the periphery checking us out. There was like a couple of years where you could feel the Sasquatches were there, but they were checking us out. And then they slowly kind of like, we made the grade. We kind of like, they were, there, a lot of the beings are kind of, reticent about working with human beings. There are definitely some that want to work with human beings, but there are some that are like, I don't know, like they've had bad experiences with humans. And they would kind of check us out. And I remember for a long time, like the fairy being, they would be checking us out. You could feel them on the periphery. But it took them a while to kind of come in. And almost like they've been at the Fairy Congress, I guess the point I'm getting at, the Fairy Congress, the fairy beings, the nature spirits have been learning to trust us and learning who we are. Some of the messages that I've been getting have been that we need to stand up strong in our humanity. Like stop groveling, stop apologizing for all the shit that humans have done. Stand up in your love, stand up when there was that quote, like when you've discovered the power of love, that'll be equivalent to discovering fire. Stand up in we need strong humans to work with. We need strong humans to work with. And there was something else, and I forgot it. So I think this is like the Fairy Congress has been almost like a cauldron for us to like really kind of get our self-confidence back as spirit workers, to know that we can work with weather, we can work with the subtle realms, we can work with the spirit of the United States of America. We can do this kind of magic. So they want us to like step up in our bigness, allow ourselves to be big. And the other thing, we're really working with a lot of the fairies it's been Disneyfied and cutesified. The Victorians, like everything became like these little Tinkerbells. And it's like, no, we're working with big spirits, mountain spirits, spirits of volcanoes, spirits of fire, elementals. We're working with some really huge beings. So that's one of the things that I just kind of wanted to put that in there. At Fairy Congress, we're really shifting that whole cutesiness. We're expanding our bandwidth of what we can do and what we're capable of doing, and that for a lot of us, the veils are getting thinner, and magic really is practical. And I think people can go, they leave the Fairy Congress, and I think they can go home and go like, yeah, if I work with the fairies, I can create good, high vibrational food for my family. I can work with the spirits of, the the forests, and we can do this. So I think we're creating, the Fairy Congress has really created a group of people, a community that can stand up and do this work. And that's what we need. We need to be able to work in harmony with nature and get some shit done and do it joyfully. Which is amazing. Can we do really, I mean, the Fairy Congress is on one hand really darn serious. I mean, we're kind of like earth revolutionaries, and we're kind of prancing and singing songs and blessing each other in joyfulness. Now, where on earth do you find that kind of combination? That's surprisingly rare. Rawr. That's my little soapbox. We're making earth revolutionaries. Any questions on that?
I'll just echo that there, Jan, that let's see, am I muted here? No. Is that we're doing, I call it doing the work. We are creating magic, and we do a lot of serious work there for the, for the earth, and for humanity, and for the other species, and our energies reach out to the greater world. So it may make it look like from the outside like a bunch of silly dressed up people just prancing around, but we are doing some magic for the world, especially at our ritual events. But it's ongoing. But our rituals a lot of times have just an awful lot of power that we use, and so and I know that the idea of being a cutesy fairies it's been a loaded word in a way in our society. And when we talked with Saphira, an old friend, the other day, she said, well, you should just call them nature spirits, because a lot more people relate to the term nature spirits in a modern way than they do the word fairy. But we're sort of sticking with this out of tradition in a way. But nature spirits is a really big part of what we're working with, but it's much bigger. And I can't I have to get a second song in here. And so since you're all muted, you can please sing along with me. It goes, I've got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got that joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. I've got that peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got that peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart to stay. Hey.
Yay. Well, with that, unless there's something else anyone wants to share, I'd like to kind of bring to a close. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I can feel, just besides the beauty of what was shared from the humans, that so much energy and joy from the other realms, the fairy realms and nature realms. So I'm really grateful for that. Just to know that this was kind of a healing for us, a place of replenishment, as well as learning more about or connecting more with the Fairy Congress again. So, and also thank you for those who donated. I really appreciate. The money will go back to the Fairy Congress to support the event. And I'd like to just take a moment. Oh, you do something?
Oh, the fairies just told me a minute ago, they said, all my fairy allies said they were all going to go hug, each one of you are going to get a hug from all my team, and they're going to hug your team. So there's, it's like they don't have to worry about COVID or anything. So there's all this hugging going on right now. I just wanted to let you know.
Great. Awesome. We need it, right? Thank you, fairies, devas, elementals, she, beings of light. Thank you, humans. For creating the circle together, and may it bring blessings to all the planets and continue on to pave the way for more joy, more gold, more belief in the magic of the unseen realm. So I just want to release the circle. Thank you, Peter, Michael, Lindsey, and Jan.
See you on the other side of the veil. No, I mean like that's